Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's The Best of Global Business campaign. I'm Ashley Blake. The aerospace industry is one of the most complex and most important of all industries. A sector that's essential to worldwide transport, whether for business, defence, military or leisure, and one where relentless technology innovation meets complicated supply chains and strict regulation at a global scale. But in the aerospace industry, it's the nuts and bolts, literally, that matter. Business Reporter has come to Cheltenham in the southwest of England to visit Ontic, one of the world's leading manufacturers of aerospace parts. To find out more about this rapidly growing company, I'm here to meet Gareth Hall, CEO of Ontic. Gareth, perhaps we could start by giving us an overview of what Ontic is and what it does here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in Bishop's Cleeve site today. We've got about 350 people here, and this is where we do complex electronics assembly and build. To answer the question more broadly around, what's the Ontic business model and what do we do? We invest to acquire and license exclusively product lines and intellectual property that's already been developed by other aerospace OEMs. GE, who just across the fence line here, Collins Aerospace, globally, Curtiss-Wright, Moog, Honeywell, and there are lots of others that we have key relationships with. We're in a constant dialogue as certain product lines become either non-core or the demand profile changes such that they become less relevant to the OEM, then we're a favoured partner to engage in a conversation around how we might acquire those product lines. When we do that, we take full responsibility for both the production of the parts, the customer relationships, and also sustaining the supply chain to produce those parts.
Gareth, what are the problems Ontic are solving?
Well, I think there's really two distinct and different problems that Ontic solves in the market. The first relates to our licensor partners, and the second relates to our end customer users, the actual users of parts. So if we start with the licensors, this is primarily around liberation of key resources or finite resources. And so when I think about resources in that sense, it's around engineering talent, floor space, and customer services. And from an OEM who's continues to develop new products year over year over year, there comes a point where they have such a significant product catalogue that there are certain products within that catalogue with reducing demand profiles that actually mean that it's very difficult for them to maintain that without taking a disproportionate amount of those resources, whether that be engineering or customer services or floor space. And so we come in and we're able to take on those product lines, fully transition them into our facilities, maintain the customer relationships, and really take on, if you like, the whole of the headache of that product line away from the OEM into our facility.
I see.
So that's, if you like, the first problem statement that we're solving. Mm-hmm. The second one is really around end customers. So this is the user of the parts. If I do need a new part, is one available? And that's where we really come in. We invest to upskill our engineers to really understand the products and to actually not just answer the phone, but seek the customers with their issues and resolve them. And then from an availability perspective, have parts either on our shelves in inventory or with a distributor, and then come up with creative different ways of supporting it, whether that be through repair schemes or actually taking on some used serviceable material and recertifying that.
I see. So give us some examples of the end user of your products that you make here.
Yeah, so our business is split fairly balanced between civil aerospace and the defence sector. So on the civil side, the major airlines that people would be familiar with, so if you're from the UK, that would be British Airways, Air France, Lufthansa, and in the US, American Airlines, United, and Delta. On the defence side, we deal in the UK with BAE Systems, whether that be for Typhoon, for Hawk, and then into the European sort of arena, the Saab Gripen, the new T7 jet, which has been developed, we also participate in that. Looking at some of the older platforms in Europe, the Tornado, we've just gone through a fairly extensive contract to provide some harnessing for the Tornado, which has been, really key part of the German Air Force's strategy. In the US, we're on most of the major platforms, so that be F-15, F-16, F-18, the vast majority of the helicopters, and so, a similar position there. We have quite a lot of business with the Japanese Ministry of Defense, and with South Korea, and with India.
And when it comes to sort of aircraft, they are heavily regulated, heavily maintained, and that's when you play a vital role, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. I mean, part of our value proposition is when we take on a license or we acquire a product line, is to ensure that we make the parts available into the market. And that availability can come through ensuring that new parts are available and in stock, but it can also be through ensuring that a repair scheme and repairs are available. And about a third of our business is actually in repairing and maintaining and overhauling customer parts that have our intellectual property. When we analyse our business, we sort of have three fundamental core competencies. First is around excellence in transitions. So when you ask me around where does our business come from, we're acquiring product lines from other aerospace OEMs. When we do that, we have to transfer the product line from an aerospace facility that we're acquiring it from into one of ours. We transfer the equipment, the processes, the know-how. So how do we learn that from other people in the business? But also the supply chain and the supply chain relationships and then the customer relationships. And so that is a competence in of itself. The second one, I would say, is around sustaining engineering. We don't have a design engineering team to develop new products. What we do have is a very extensive engineering team across all of our locations who are focused on how do we sustain the products over time. That would be direct on the line, making changes to allow for obsolescence to be managed, but also working with customers where issues arise. And then the third of the three competencies I talked to would be around supply chain competence. Because we're ordering relatively low volume with quite high mix, then we don't often have the leverage that others might have within the supply chain. And so we have to engage differently, and we have to form partnerships, and we have to be present in suppliers. And so understanding that and operating differently is something that we've worked on a lot over the last 10 years, and it's something that really marks us out from some of the competitors.
Gotcha. So Ontic is a global business, as you've described. What's the scope of your capabilities?
So we have about 1,600 employees across the globe, 9 different facilities, 2 of which are not actually on stream yet. They're going to be dedicated MRO facilities. One in the US in a place called Miramar in Florida. And then here locally in Gloucestershire, we've just taken a lease on a building in Tewkesbury. And so that's about another 65,000 square feet of space. And so we will be moving our MRO business into that facility.
Gareth, what happens at this particular location and what's manufactured here?
I think the best way is probably just to show you around and let you see some of the guys making the parts.
Oh, okay.
So actually earlier I mentioned repair, maintenance and overhaul. So here, this is our MRO station. So this is where we have people repairing and overhauling civil products that we own the intellectual property on.
I see, right. And I noticed we've had to have a change of clothes in this area.
Indeed. So this is all about electrostatic discharge.
Right.
And so that's electricity that builds up in you, and it can actually impact the performance of components that we use in our assemblies. And so by wearing this and special shoes and a special floor, we limit the impacts of that on any parts that we produce.
So at Bishop's Cleeve, this site here, how many people are based here?
So we've got about 350 people here at this site. And actually, this is it's probably a really good sell for us just to pause at and shows a number of things that we talked about earlier. What we're working on here is an A350 maintenance panel. You know, all the guys are working on the same parts. Complex electrical assembly, typical of what we do at this particular site. Right. You know, at Staverton, which is about 10 minutes from here, we'd be specialising in pneumatics and hydraulics. I'm in Chatsworth, just outside of LA. More electromechanical units. And then in Creedmoor, which is close to Raleigh in North Carolina, that's got quite a mix of products as it grows in size.
And the talent, where do you recruit the talent from?
Well, I mean, look at this as a really good representative cell, actually. We've got some really experienced technicians who've been doing this type of work, not necessarily these parts, but this type of work for a period of time. And then we also have a fairly extensive apprenticeship program. George is part of that program. He's been with us for a couple of months. And he will go through various different cells, learning multiple skills. And then once he's finished his apprenticeship, you know, he will become a fully fledged technician.
I see. And sort of moving down the line in different departments, is this area alone all responsible for the intricate stuff?
No. If we look across the floor, we'll see it's broadly similar skill sets, some slight nuances and differences, and there are some areas that we can't go into because they're producing military parts which are controlled, but the skill sets are broadly similar. And probably a differentiator for technicians here at Ontic is they've got a desire, and they have to have a desire to work on lots of different products, whereas in some aerospace companies you could work on the same product for almost all of your entire career. Right. Whereas here there is an expectation that you want to get involved in different things and new things as they come into the facility.
Yeah, variety. Excellent.
You know, what's amazing is that we're producing highly complex assemblies and parts in the UK and developing and using existing skills to do that. You know, we hear a lot about manufacturing in the UK. This is a really good example of high quality jobs producing really complex parts for the aerospace industry.
And Ontic, you can respond to demand because the world is always changing, particularly in the current situation.
Yeah, well, I think this facility is a really good example of that. When we started here in 2012, we had around 65 people. And over the sort of 10, 12 years, we've been fortunate enough to bring new product lines into the facility and then grow the skill base. We also found that we had a sort of aging population, if you like, of skills. People who've been doing the job for a long time. And so through the apprenticeship program that we brought in, which we started frankly 10 years ago, we've been able to, you know, transfer those skills from some of the guys who've now retired into a younger population.
During your tenure, you've seen a rapid growth, haven't you?
When I joined, we had around 100 people in one facility. And like I said, today we've got around 1,600 people across what will be nine different facilities. So I think we've got a very, very strong and clear strategy and vision. And we have a shareholder that we're incredibly closely aligned with and have a great relationship with. And I think that creates a good foundation for growth. But frankly, to execute growth, you need the right people and the right team. And that's something that we've worked really hard on, to attract the right talent into the company, to make sure we recognise the talent we have and then promote it, but then also make sure we have a culture that recognises people's capabilities and their ability to make decisions and allow them to make decisions and move the business forward. So I think creating the foundation, you know, with the vision and the right shareholder, super important, but having the right people in place and allowing them to be successful is really what's driven the growth.
Excellent. Gareth Hall, Chief Executive Officer, Ontic. Thank you.
Thank you.